I wanted to give a quick summary of the causes and motivations for the conflict that we discussed when we first began talking about the Iliad. As you remember, there's quite a variety of possibilities here, all of which seem to be simultaneously present. And the possibilities themselves don't really fit together in any coherent whole. They do raise two central questions that I wanted to, again, remind us of as we move forward in thinking about the poem. The first question has to do with the nature of these motivations. We notice that many of them seemed less than admirable, and they're problematic not just in our terms, as we look back at this poem, but clearly in the terms of the poem itself, because characters express their disapproval of these actions from the very beginning. And it's not just the minor characters who are experiencing these particular motivations. Agamemnon and Achilles, the two central characters of the opening scenes, are, they're petty, they're ignoble, they're selfish, childish, trivial, any of the kinds of things that we might assign to that could be assigned to the period as well. And this raises a larger issue, how we're supposed to actually respond to these heroes if they have both these noble and ignoble motivations. We, and particularly I think maybe we, are used to heroic narratives being composed of heroes and villains, and we're used to sides being obvious. And this probably accounts for the reason that most Hollywood representations of the Trojan War, and of the Iliad in particular, tend to do everything they can, really, to make one side into the good guys and one side into the bad guys. But it's worth remembering that the Iliad itself tends not to do this, and we want to keep that in our mind. The other question really has to do with the intervention of the gods, which of all the causes and motivations for the conflict is the one that really least fits into the picture. All of the other ones are understandable in human terms. And it does raise a big question, and one that is important for the whole poem, which is, how do we understand the meaning or value of human action, which is, of course, the majority of what's happening in the poem, if the world is dominated by fate or the direct intervention of gods who have their own idea of how things are supposed to be going? How are we supposed to understand what happens? Is it undervalued by is the meaning of human action undervalued by the fact that it is under the control of the gods or not? And again, this is not just our question, it's a question that characters themselves have in the poem. And in our discussion of Helen, we noticed her resentment of the manipulation that she's undergone by Aphrodite, her criticism of the goddess. Perhaps she's the person who comes closest to actually telling a god or goddess to piss off. So you get a sort of sense that the characters in the Iliad themselves are in some ways uncomfortable with this kind of divine intervention, even though it is an ever-present fact of their lives. So that's the other open question. Both of these things are going to be important throughout the Iliad, and particularly as we move toward the end.